Hi guys! If you're watching this, then that means you're watching the first official episode of my new segment, the Who's Its and Whatnots of Writing. Now, I've been planning this for ages. I have been wanting to discuss writing topics with you guys for ages, and the fact that I just said these words makes it a thing. It's a thing now. I'm really happy about that, especially now that I'm recording this and it's working, because this episode was supposed to be up yesterday and my computer just refused to work with me, but now it is. Today I'm going to be talking about pantsers versus plotters. Now, if you're a writer, you're definitely one of those things, or a combination of both. And if you don't know what those two terms are, then watch on and find out. Whether you're writing a short story, a novel, or a series, there's always that one question that each and every writer asks themselves before they start writing it. Do I want to plan this novel? Not everyone plans. Not everyone wants not to plan. That made no sense. What I'm trying to say is, there are two different categories you can fit into. Number one is being a pantser. A pantser is someone who does not plan at all. They start off with a simple idea of what they want their story to be, but not so detailed enough for it to be confined within a story outline. They let the story write itself. They don't know where it's headed. It's kind of like going on a journey with the characters and not really deciding beforehand how it's going to end out. And that can be fun. A plotter is someone who outlines very detailed or detailed enough to know how exactly the story is going to end. They don't let their characters take over the story. They know exactly what they want and they get there. Now, the best part about being a pantser is that you can take the novel wherever you want it to go. You're simply a bystander that kind of watches the characters form the story. You're writing it out, but at the same time you're living it, like the first time you read a book. It's like you are just as much excited to know what's going to happen at the end because you haven't read it yet. So that kind of excitement kind of spurs you on to keep writing, and that's one of the best things about being a pantser. There's limitless options to how the story can end or to what can happen. You can introduce a character, you can kill off a character, you can have something completely crazy happen, and it wouldn't be wrong. There would be nothing to worry about because you don't have an outline. But at the same time, that can be a massive problem. Later, when you're done writing the story and you're reading back, there will be lots of editing and re-editing, because there are definitely going to be a few plot holes or parts that don't match with each other. When you're writing and just letting the story flow, it can happen where you kind of just let it flow too much that there are some parts that don't exactly match with the rest, and that means a lot of editing later. And if you love editing, then that's great. But if you're not a fan of that process, then it can be a little tiring when you have to identify all the different mistakes or mismatches there are and fix them. Another thing that can happen is that you can get stuck. When you're writing a story and letting it kind of just take over and write itself, it can get to a point where you just don't feel like writing it anymore or wanting to know what's going to happen because it has no direction. And that can result in a lot of multiple projects that are unfinished, especially if you're a pantser. I used to be a pantser, and there are so many stories that I just wrote with like reckless abandon in the beginning and then just left it at midway point, or even in the beginning sometimes, because I just didn't have that drive anymore. And that resulted in me having several wonderful story ideas that I have seen grown into potential novels just being abandoned. And I don't like having my work just abandoned like that or orphaned in that sense. So that is a risk, that you kind of just lose your drive for the story because you yourself don't know where it's headed. So that is a potential risk. But massive creativity options. You have so many outlets, you can do anything you want with a story, and that is the best advantage. Now, a plotter is someone who plots a story in advance before writing it. I have wondered how much you have to have planned or outlined before in order to be classified as a plotter. In my own point of view, If you have planned a story enough to know exactly where it's headed and how it's going to end, you're a plotter. Someone with a roadmap and who knows how the story is going to go down. There are several advantages of being a plotter. For one, less editing later. You know what's going to happen. There won't be any plot holes. You won't have to look for any mismatches in the story between the beginning, the middle, and the end. And that is much easier editing job later. That makes it easier. And that's great because I'm not a fan of editing that much, for me personally. And another advantage is that you can balance the different themes of the story rather than focus on one thing. You'll have different plots. There'll be subplots, there'll be the main plot, and if you plan ahead, you can balance what's going to happen and what events will happen in the story to make sure those themes come out alive and help to emphasize what's more important in the story. Like rather than a love triangle being the main center of a story in the Hunger Games, it's more about the political conflict. So I'm not sure if Suzanne Collins actually planned ahead. I'm just doing an example. And so yeah, it helps with smoother planning. And there's one more. Right. When you have writer's block and you just lack the inspiration or motivation to write, there is a document that practically says what you want for the story to be. You don't have to be like, I don't know where this story is headed, I'm confused, because there's an outline. And that gives you a higher chance of surviving writer's block when you have a plot line or an outline ready to guide you in where you want the story to go. You'll just be like, writer's block, huh? Achoo! You'll fight it and you'll come out a survivor. It's easier when you're a plotter because you know exactly where the story's headed. So you can just be like, psh. Sometimes I have gotten writer's block because I knew exactly where the story was headed. There was very little space for creativity for me to just input new ideas when I have a very, very detailed outline. So I just got kind of bored, like, okay, I know where the story's headed, what's the excitement in that? The solution to that is that you can always leave a little space for possibilities. When you're writing a story and you have an outline, don't make it too precise, don't make it too detailed. Leave a little space so that you know that if you want to add something, add a new component to the story while you're writing it, there's a possibility to do that without completely messing up the outline. An outline can be confining to some people. Knowing what's gonna happen in the story is kind of like opening a book and having spoilers for it before you even read it. And I hate spoilers. I really hate spoilers. And when you're writing a story, I know that's different from reading. But it's just as much, I think it involves just as much, or in some cases, even more excitement than actually reading, because you are the creator. And sometimes if you want the characters to kind of just live the story for you, that's not going to happen when you are the one who's completely deciding step 1, step 2, step 3, the end. And lastly, redoing an entire plotline is not fun. I planned a story and I started writing it, and my pantser ways came in the middle, and I was just like, okay, let me just add a little component. And I did. The thing is, I hadn't left room for extra components in the story in my outline. So what happened was that I completely ended up writing a different story than what I had planned for. And then when I came to the editing stage and I compared it to the outline, I noticed it was completely different. And there were still parts of the outline that I wanted to include. So I had to redo the whole story, start from word number 1, page 1, and build it up again. That can be very tiring. So if you're a plotter and you have an outline that you want to follow, make sure that you are making the right decision, that you aren't gonna be like, oh, okay, I've planned this, but now I want something different. Because then that will mean you have to plan the whole entire outline if it's a really big change that you want to include in the story. I've had much internal debate trying to figure out which category I fit into. And then I looked it up because I thought I was both. And there is actually a thing for where you're a combination of both a plotter and a pantser. It's where you're a plantser. That's a really good combination. A planter is someone who plots and sometimes just writes without, worrying about where the story's gonna go. I like to think that I'm both. For certain genres, I will definitely plan ahead. Like if I'm writing fantasy or sci-fi and it's taking place in a different world, I will plan much ahead and try to pinpoint any particular details that are very crucial to the story. If I'm writing young adult romance or anything just like drama, I'll let the characters do the work for me. It's more about the characters than it is about the world or the setting. If you're writing about multiple characters, different like multiple point of views, role play, definitely plan. Because you don't want one character's story to mess up with the others. You need them to be kind of coordinated so that it makes sense. Otherwise, when you're editing it, you'll have to go through all these different characters and try to match the stories together, and that can be very, very, very tiring. Trust me. Unless you like editing. In which case, thumbs up to you, because I just cannot sometimes. I just can't. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment. What do you guys like to do? Are you pantsers or plotters, or are you plantsers like me? Comment below and give me your opinions on what you thought about this video and about the topic I discussed today. Next week, I'll be talking about how to construct a plot and how I do it. And hopefully, I'll see you guys then. You can follow me down on the different social media links I've put in the description links. I have put in the description box below. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Goodreads, so you guys can message me on there if you want to have a chat. Until then, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!